Hey everyone, welcome to Tri-State Whitetails. Today I'd like to just tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Brandon Burleson. I live here in Ohio. It's kind of the northwest Ohio. It's a small town called Antwerp. I own 25 acres here. I am currently tilling up an area to put in a small food plot, probably about a half acre to a quarter acre. I'm hoping to surround this food plot on the outer edges with some clover, and on the inside of this food plot I'm going to put in probably some turnips or some sort of just a mix that I have of a few different things. I can go ahead and put those on camera or on film for you so you can see what's in that. I am originally from Indiana, just across the border here, in a town called Huntertown. It's another small town. I grew up there, kind of out in the country. I like to do a lot of squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting. I had a 410. I'd just go across the road just banging on squirrels and rabbits when I was a kid. My grandfather, he would go out and go deer hunting, and he'd go up to Michigan deer hunting on Drummond Island and come back with these really cool stories. My stepdad would go deer hunting and come home with these deer, and it would just intrigue me. So when I was 10 years old, I took my bow, I walked across the road to this little farm that I had permission to hunt, and I climbed up this really old tree stand, and I sat in this tree stand. It was probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was hunting season, and I did have my hunting license, but it was just midday and I didn't know what I was doing. I just said, I'm gonna go hunting some deer and see what happens. So I climbed up in tree stand with a buddy of mine in the middle of the woods, and we both got bored. I climbed down, I walked through the middle of the woods. This woods is probably only 8-10 acres at the most. I walked across through the middle of the woods, and I told my buddy, I said, you see anything? He said, no. He comes down, and we walk to the backside of the woods, and a couple deer run out of the backside of the woods. So I said, well, let's go get back in our tree stand. We moved some deer. So I walked over to the corner and went back up my tree stand, and it wasn't 5 minutes, and I heard a deer coming through the corn, and this 8-point buck, young buck, he was probably a 2.5-year-old, maybe 3.5, but he was a nice 8-point buck, and my heart was pounding so hard you could hear it come out my mouth. I swear, when I opened my mouth, I thought he was going to hear my heartbeat. So I drew back on this buck. He wasn't 10 yards from me, and I let it fly, and I shot under him, but I was so exhilarated. I was screaming across the woods to my friend and telling him that I shot at a deer. I shot at a deer. And he come down, he didn't believe me, and I showed him the hoof prints and everything else, and just in that moment I was hooked. There was nothing else for me. I wanted to deer hunt. So I have been deer hunting since I was 10 years old. I have not killed any giants. I killed my first buck here on my own property, this 25-acre lot. He's an 8-pointer. He's hanging on my wall, and I was probably 29 years old or so when I shot him, and so that tells you how long it took before I killed my first buck. I let a lot of little deer walk. I did kill a couple doe here and there before that, and I wanted my first buck to be something special, and here on my own property made it very special. I shot him at 50 yards with my compound bow in the backfield. So now that was the second year that I own this property. I'm now in I believe it's the 5th year I've owned this property, and I continue to learn and to do things differently around here, trying to make my little 25 acres be the most appealing to deer, because this 25 acres that I own is a strip, and this strip runs right through the center of a large woods. I would say it's about 80 to 100 acres. This strip is very thick. Before I bought this, they logged this woods out, and they logged it heavy, so it grew very thick with a lot of small trees, so I've put a lot of work in trails and cutting it open, being able to drive my four-wheeler and my side-by-side and tractors in there and come around in there, and the deer just loved it in there. When I first moved out here and started hunting, I seen so many deer, I couldn't believe it. I never seen so many deer in my life hunting in Indiana, and I had my choice to pick which buck I wanted, and it was great. But I noticed things were changing. Every year it would seem that I would see less and less deer, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. What was making this woods less appealing? How did this change happen? What was it that changed? And I realized that the only thing that changed here was me. I showed up. I started hunting. I started doing what I thought was right, which was going in the woods, cutting trails, breaking stuff open so deer could walk on my beautiful, perfect paths. And I never paid attention to the wind or how I was cutting trees or anything in particular. And realizing that I was the only difference made me realize that I had to make a change. I was the one making all these mistakes. So now I have learned to stay out of the woods as much as possible. I've learned that I don't have to manicure my trails to a perfection. I can go in, I can bush hog them maybe once or twice a year, keep them clean like that, and the deer still don't even really use them. It's mainly for me to go in and out. I've noticed that when I put up stands and I try to cut trails for the deers to walk right under my tree stand, the deer that I would get on camera in that area would start moving. And that was my fault. I was being too much for the deer. I was making too much of a presence, making too much of a change. So I've learned to do as minimal as possible in the woods to keep the deer happy, to keep them coming around, because if I'm in there, they don't want to be in there. If I make a change, that's a problem to them. They see a threat. We are a predator to them. So keeping it open for the deer to kind of do as they please has been the best change for me. Putting in this food plot on the outside of my woods, I think this is kind of new this year. I put in a small one last year. I had a lot of deer on it, a lot of pictures of bucks, really nice bucks, especially early season. Real late at night though, so I'm learning this year, trying to set up cameras so I can figure out where they're coming from and how I can better position myself to get them earlier in the daylight rather than seeing them late at night and them not even being able to shoot them because it's so late, obviously. So I'm learning this year. I've expanded my food plot. I'm going to do some different things with this food plot. This is right here in the front section of my 25 acres. My home is that way, about 200 yards or so. It's 400 foot wide by, I don't know, a half a mile long. So it's just a strip that I own. But I know that through learning deer management and bringing things on my property that appeal to deer, I can make this 25 acres fun and enjoyable, and I can kill big deer right here on my own ground. I do have permission to hunt other ground, but obviously my favorite is right here in my backyard, and I hope that you guys will stick with me and enjoy watching what I do with this ground this year, and hopefully we can knock down a big one this year. Stick with me this season on Tri-State Whitetails. Enjoy.